barracks, early expand, and then what do you follow it up with? You follow it up with a ton of barracks, and you completely stop Marauder production. You get a very small number of Marauders. You even pull guys out of gas. I actually prefer putting one in the gas and getting one fewer Marauder. And then you can end up getting stim after you start a ton of barracks. So here comes, bam, there's another barracks going down. So this is an early expand style. Not necessarily the Morrow build where we skip gas altogether, the build that Morrow pioneered in the very early days of beta. Instead, this is just 3 Marauders early on to shut down probes, deal with early aggression, and then just slamming forward with tons of barracks. Is he actually getting another barracks? Wow, yeah, look at that. 6 barracks. Awesome. And this is when Marines start getting made and when Stim starts getting researched. White Raw, same old. Getting pretty much Zealots and a Stalker, getting the Void Ray up really early, and again a Twilight Council. Now, what does White Raw see at this point in time? Pretty much nothing, right? Pretty much just relying on this Void Ray to do some awesome stuff. And here's the second Void Ray coming out now. Why? Because he just thinks that he can screw up his opponent a little bit more. And this is a little bit of a tense period. This is part of the reason why I favor skipping this third Marauders, because all this stuff gets up faster. And we can deal with this sort of Void Ray harass a little bit more easily. But uh-oh, it looks like White Raw has killed off one refinery already. He's getting in here. The Marines trying to poke up. And this is a little unfair because this is way back when Void Rays had range 7 instead of range 6. But fortunately, this isn't really coming up because White Raw is electing to not micro this Void Ray ever. Looks like he was, I guess, caught up with the scouting barracks. I don't actually know. A little bit less than optimal. But either way, he sees a limited number of Marines. Has he scouted this front? No, he still hasn't scouted this front yet. Now, if this were the old White Raw, the White Raw from the last 3 games, we'd probably be seeing 4 barracks go up, speed for the Zealots come out very early, an expansion, or even maybe not, maybe just Dark Templar up, and then a big emphasis on 1 or 2 base play. But Terran's doing something a little bit different in these games. Oh, first of all, scouting with one of the barracks, kind of a cool technique. Terran's early expanding this game, already has the concussive shell done, hasn't quite gotten stim yet. We're going to see White Raw advance a little bit far forward and take this Xel'Naga Watchtower. And because Q-Tips is early expanding, there's a lot less of a threat of some sort of big aggression moving in and killing off White Raw. And as a result, White Raw can afford to expand again. There's the 3rd expansion going down. There's no need to get the Dark Templars up. There's no need to get 4 Warp Gates worth of Zealot legs. We can sort of get a delayed 3 Warp Gate. And, you know, White Raw pokes at the front, sees all these bunkers here, definitely cannot engage. But these Void Rays, nonetheless, are being pretty annoying. White Raw needs to be careful with them. Oh, God. Now, I want to point out, again, that this is a little sloppy. White Raw has lost 2 Void Rays pretty much for no reason. But still, look at the gigantic effect that it has had on Q-Tip's play. In terms of the food counts, they're still pretty even. But look, Q-Tip's adding on a missile turret. Oh, here's another missile turret going down. And really, these missile turrets, though great at moving Void Rays away, these are places that White Raw really isn't going to attack ever again. White Raw's going to pop over here and hit these buildings. And if a turret goes down here, White Raw's going to move over here and hit these buildings. And then try to hit these bunkers at the front. He's just going to move wherever the turrets are not. And all that time that White Raw bought allows him to get these 3 bases up. And then once he gets the 3 bases, comes right back to getting a whole bunch of gateways. There's a Dark Shrine coming up. Doesn't look like yet there are any Dark Shrines at this point in time. White Raw just grouping up right there. And Q-Tips has to delay, has to delay because the stim is so far behind, because he's been getting messed with in his main for such a long time. More barrack scouting, which is kind of cool because I've never actually seen a player do it this aggressively before. Kind of a funky thought that even if your opponent is going Void Rays, barracks have so much health that you can still scout it nonetheless. But looks like there's some Marines getting made, usual stuff. No ghosts were able to be produced, so none of that stuff's going to get in White Raw's way. I think that because this is one of these earlier days games, again, these Void Rays still do have range 7. It's that early in the patch set. That White Raw has almost certainly refined the style a little bit. But the same core ideas are here, that our opponent is getting way pushed back by these Void Rays, has to get all this anti-air, and as a result hasn't really gotten to move out very much. And now we're going to move past that basic core idea of the day, which is this transition that White Raw's doing, which is Void Ray into Zealot with leg speed and Templar, whether it be dark or high. It's still really good. But here's something that a lot of Terran players were doing for a while, which is after you early expand, you suddenly get a bunch of starports and just go mass Banshee, because your opponents most of the time are getting a lot of ground units like Zealot High Templar, because that's just so good against Marauder. And a lot of Protosses get caught with their pants down in this spot. So one adjustment that I would say, if you're White Raw, after you get that third base, get a robotics bay, so that way you can scout some stuff out with an observer, or even use the Void Rays for those. But uh-oh, here comes the final confrontation. Oh my god, my heart's pounding. Can you guys handle it? We're just going to directly sprint towards it. Oh my god, 2 engineering bays going down, forges as well. Or not engineering base, robotics facilities going down. Oh, he's gotten the storm. He's getting the Kadaran amulet. Terran moving out here now. Huge army, 130 food versus 130 food. Expanding here, and it looks like he's going to be setting up another expansion here. Plenty of Banshees finished right now. Even cloaking is done. Oh my god, look, here comes the robotics bay. He will be able to get out observers in time, but oh no, he's going to get all his Templar sniped. But watch the speed Zealots as they move into Q-Tip's army. Oh my god, he moves back. He ends up losing 2 for absolutely nothing. But he's just pulling back to regroup. Wasn't able to get a good storm off. Oh my god, who's going to win? There's just so many Zealots and they're killing units so fast. Q-Tip disconnects. Awesome. Fantastic. Now let's go ahead and take some questions. Alright, moving on over to the main screen. And you know, that's one thing that I really just like in general about this play, is that in a general sense what it does is, by getting Void Rays really early on, it forces your opponent to do a limited set of things, and then you can abuse that. In fact, the first question was Quandis. Says, Day 9, as an amateur RTS player, what is the one thing to take away from White Raw's Protoss play? It's that exact idea that if you get one unit and think about what that forces your opponent to do, you can respond to what he is forced to do with another set of units. So, if I make a Void Ray, he's forced to get all these Marines that he doesn't want to do, and then I can get a whole bunch of Zealots and Templar and Dark Templar, and I can abuse that quite a bit. And this is really, really, really common general theme in a lot of circumstances. So, for instance, in Zerg vs. Terran, if I make a Mutalisks as Zerg, my Terran opponent has to make a ton of Marines, and then I can make a whole bunch of Banelings. Because in general, a Terran might not really want to make that many Marines, might be doing mech, where he's getting, you know, a ton of Hellions and Thors, and if you're getting the Mutalisks fast enough, they don't quite have enough Thors early on, they need to abuse Marines. And, or excuse me, if they are transitioning into any number of barracks in the later stage of the game, they might want to make tons of Marauders. I know, for instance, Greetorp loves having a huge Marauder composition, so that's good. But if you get Mutalisks, then all of a sudden, a bunch of Marines pop out, a bunch of Banelings, just cook everything up. So it's a good little 1-2 punch. So if you are ever confused and lost on ways to play a matchup, you can start thinking of a lot of those mid to low tier units and say to yourself, well, if I make this, does that force him to do anything? And that it might not always be the case where the answer is, oh yes, it obviously forces him to do this. For instance, the Ghost. The Ghost doesn't really force your opponent to do that much. It forces him to have really good control with like his sentries and that sort of stuff. But if you get an air unit, if you get a Banshee with Terran, oh my god, then Protoss must get detection. So I auto-win against these fast Phoenix and 4 warp gating players, because I just get Banshees with Cloak so fast. That sort of thing. And then once you have this basic idea of, oh, I kill everything else, but you know, he manages to live against this one thing. Then you can start developing an entire big, gigantic strategy. Here's a great question by PLX Dratuka, who says, don't you think the only reason this 4-unit strategy works is because people tend to over-respond to the threat? I don't actually think that is the case, because there's this other issue that's at hand. So if I see a Void Ray and I'm Terran, I just say to myself, yeah, I gotta make a lot of Marines. Because there's always the possibility of a player making a whole ton of Void Rays. So he shows one Void Ray. I make the 7 or 8, 9 Marines that I want to, and then go back to all Marauder production. And then he has 5 or 6 Void Rays when I come out to attack. And it's like, whoa, my god, you know, I never would have seen that coming, you know. And if you scan it, you have to scan the exact location of the Void Rays, which you're not going to be able to do a lot of the time. It kind of like opens up this possibility. And likewise, if you see that he has a starport with an add-on with a tech lab, you kind of do have to get detection. I wouldn't really call it over-responding. I would just still call it forcing. He has to be very, very, very careful, or else he'll lose. Now, that is something you do have to take into account. What if my opponent over-responds, and he does way more than he needs to, and that's the only reason that that works? That'll be really obvious at the time. You know, it'll be like, you know, you move in with one Void Ray, and you barely end up winning